Okay, I should be live. Let's look at the stream. Maybe I am. Yeah, I probably am, but there's nobody here yet, I think. I'm on two different computers here. I'm going to give this about 2 or 3 minutes before I start talking for real about my thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. And I just realized it's more than I can squeeze into the in betweens of commentary on IEMs and how they sound. I'm just like, I just have so many thoughts. And there's so much going on in life that I feel like sharing some of that's pretty nice too. Good morning from the Philippines, Edward says. Hi. Stale says, glad to be here. Pikachu says, hi, Dan. Hey, Dan. Andrew says, hi, Dan. Nikidemia. Love you guys. This is awesome. Love people for being here early as soon as the stream opened up. Just really chill of everybody. How was the break? Like my weekend break? I don't know. Decent. Actually stressful in some ways. Lots on my mind. But, you look for the good stuff, the good moments with family and so on. Guys, I'm going to be like a minute. I'm going to be like a minute or two. I'm going to wait for more people to show up before I start sharing things because I like the idea of people reacting live as things are said. So I'll be right back. I'm going to just turn off my mic and camera, or I'll leave my camera on at least. But I'll turn off my mic. I'll be back in like a minute. I'm going to get a snack, and then I'm going to just enjoy a long session talking my thoughts, graphs, the community, all that stuff that the title of this video says, and I'll be back. So don't go away. Get a snack yourself. I don't know. This should be recordable, so you can go back if you miss anything. Yeah. 2 minutes. Be right back. There we go. Got my water. Ate a quick snack. Plan to stay here for a bit. So I'm going to get right to it. Sorry if the wire banging makes noise. I'm still trying to figure out how exactly to fix this wire knocking situation. And my hands making noises. Like even this connector here and this little handle transfers sound through the microphone. And I don't really want to make a stand. I really don't want to use stands. This is just too natural for me. Holding a thing, moving around, it's like a human being. I know it's better fidelity to have a stationary thing that we're just yeah, I'm on a radio show and I'm going to keep my head perfectly still because wow, this is how I'm going to get my, I don't know. It's just a whole vibe. I don't, it's not me. At least not for presenting myself on my channel the way I want to. So there's a thought. Wait, is my chat up to date? Hey, can you guys hear this? I'm curious what's the delay, if you guys can say something in response to this. I still just see the last message just says, now I want a snack. Is this refreshing? I'm sure there's people here. Or maybe there's not. Maybe they got a snack while I was getting a snack. And I'm talking to myself. Yeah, this could be a big delay. I have no idea. I have no idea what the latency really is like. And no delay? Well, I mean, it might seem like it's not a delay. We only know if it's a delay if I can see the message occurring right when I say something. For example, if I set a countdown in 5 seconds, say something in the chat, say the word now in the chat. Okay, somebody get the word now ready, and then press enter when you hear me say the word now at the end of my countdown. Okay, we're gonna see if there's no delay. The distance, I'll tell you. I'll count. I'll keep a timer. I'll tell you how many seconds it is before I say it, and when I see it appear in the chat on my YouTube studio here. Open stopwatch. Okay, there we go. Oh, they changed how this looks. Okay, so I'm going to count down from 5 seconds, and I'm going to say the word now, and then you type in the word now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now. I just press start. I still don't see anything. We're at 5 seconds. 6, 7 seconds. Just keep going up. Nobody said now yet. Unless nobody's doing it. Oh, okay, that was 16 seconds as soon as Kaidemia said now. So there's at least a good 15, 16 second delay between all of you, before I see your messages. Just so you know, that's like a heads up. And you probably see it quicker than me. I mean, you probably see me quicker I don't know. Maybe it takes 7 seconds for me to reach you and 7 seconds for your chats to... No, but your chats are live. So, it's whatever. I'm overthinking it. It's a 15-second delay. Whatever I said. Okay, I'm going to start talking about stuff, about opinions and stuff. No more waiting. I think we're at enough concurrent viewers and people who want to be here, and I'm sure somebody's going to catch up to the stream at this moment who misses it. So, okay, let me start with this, guys. And thank you all the way, by the way, for even bothering to be here when... You have no idea what I'm going to talk about, except for the title of the video saying something about graphs and stuff. So thank you. That's true, chill vibes right there. Everybody's just coming to hear me ramble on whatever topic and maybe chat while you're here. So, okay. I want to say, first of all, something that's been weighing on me for the entirety of my channel. I constantly think about this, and I never think about just posting and sharing or saying this in some kind of format like a live stream. And I feel like the longer I don't share this kind of thought, these thoughts that I'm about to say, the longer it just dwells and dwells and doesn't feel good to hold on to. I start to feel more and more like people won't be able to see me for who I actually am, and they'll just see what's cut together in the takes of a review. And I mean, I try to convey myself as much as I can in those reviews. I try to be essentially the same person, but it's not the person. It's the person with the hat of reviewer, So anyway, the things that I've been thinking about, for starters, that keeps weighing on me. This is for me a big one. I feel like I say things in my reviews that are off the cuff and are honest with how I interpret things at the moment and what words I find associate my feelings with what I'm trying to say, but I feel like I'm wrong sometimes. I feel like, and I don't mean like in the times where I have a strong opinion. I mean, I feel like I'm wrong certain times with basics. I feel like I sometimes might say the wrong instrument. I feel like but on any level, really, I feel like wherever I'm wrong, it weighs on me. And it's, like I said, cymbals in the last video, and that is true. Like in real life listening, you can hear the cymbals in the melody be splashy compared to other kind of attacks of the cymbal in other products. I mean, I feel that way when I try it on in my own ears. But then when I listen to the YouTube video on my monitoring headphones or speakers or whatever, it doesn't necessarily splash the same way. The cymbals are not the thing that come across as much. It's like that the drumstick on the rim of the snare is the one that really gets me, because that's the one that makes that loud kind of snappy sound, pa, pa, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers song. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not a wrong thing to say it's the cymbals when that's what I hear in real life, but it feels wrong when I'm presenting a demo that doesn't necessarily portray it to that level. And I don't know. It's little things like that. I just feel like I hate it if I'm ever being misleading, even unintentionally, to people. And I hate not being able to always reflect on that and have the presence of mind enough in the moment of making my commentary to speak to exactly what I mean and exactly which way from how I experienced it versus how you'll experience it. And it doesn't even need to be that example. Like, it's just all the time. There's so many thoughts that are like in here that don't always come out in the video. And there's reflections I have over, like, what did I say that was kind of off to the viewer? Or what did I say that might have been flat out wrong? Like, what if I said cymbal when it was actually the snare rim completely? You know, I think about that. Like, what if that's what I actually thought about when I first listened to it? Or what if I speak to an old impression, something that's not updated, something that's not truthful to, like, I always think about this too. Like, when I first listen to something, I almost listen to everything that comes in the mail to me, which isn't much these days. Actually, things have kind of slowed down for me. That's another topic to get into, but I don't know why that has happened exactly, but maybe I burned some bridges. I don't know. But it feels like less. But when I first try something that comes in the mail, I listen to, like, my whole playlist for an hour. You know, however long, an hour, 13 minutes, an hour 10, I guess, if you exclude the white noise track I have at the end, which is, by the way, that pink noise. The pink noise track, if you ever looked at my demo list on Apple Music, it has a pink noise track. And I only have that for monitoring purposes before recording, because I set the levels on each ear to be equal, according to the meters. And my pink noise is my way of just checking levels. But anyway, I don't use it for actual, like, listening and comparing, but I've thought about it. But anyway, moving on. I listen to a whole playlist for like an hour, 10 minutes with any new item that comes to me. And I try it. Also, I go to my most loved playlist that you can also find in all my descriptions in all my videos. I love sharing that 700 plus track list, by the way. That's like, I think the most flattered I would be by anybody who likes my channel is if somebody said, I like your music. Because that's personal. That's real. That's what it really is, you know? And if somebody says, like, I like the music that you like, it's like, oh, that's literally what this whole hobby is supposed to be about. That's awesome. I mean, yeah. Although the hobby has a way of making you have a hobby itself of just, like, trying to explore and find out what different implementations of drivers can do to the sound. But ultimately, it's still that search for that best sound, that best musical enjoyment. So that's still, it comes back to that, the hobby. Even if you're really into the tech side and the community side, it always does come back to, ultimately, how does the music sound in my ear for whatever driver array there is, or whatever budget or whatever. That's another thing. I'm totally getting into a sidetrack. I was going somewhere, and I was like, hey, there's a nice tangent. Let's go there. So let's go there for a second, because it seems right. I want to share this thought too. But you ever notice how we can get caught in conversations of like, well, that's not a planar. We shouldn't compare it to something if it's not a planar. Like planars to planars. Really? Why? Or, well, that one's a dynamic, and I like dynamics, so I want to know how the other dynamics sound. Does it matter? They're all pieces of plastic with stuff inside, meant to produce music. I mean, to me, it's interesting to talk about driver types insofar as a conversation can be constructive towards our knowledge, helping us individually construct our knowledge of the technicals behind it and our understandings and appreciations of what engineering might go into it. And it might help us be better informed if there's a tendency amongst a certain driver to produce a certain kind of flavor profile, then it might behoove us to be aware, to be educated, informed of that particular driver having a particular flavor set. Or an inclination to a certain flavor, because then if something else comes out with that same driver, we will, even if the frequency graph, pops up and down in different places than the previous thing that used the same driver, we could still be like, oh, well, it's probably going to sound similar to what I expect, and I have an idea of what that bass might I hear some snappiness in the upper end or something, blah 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 blah. But ultimately, if you're able to interpret graphs, then the driver inside is essentially meaningless, because or if you're able to look at it from the graphical standpoint, the graphs only measure literally like exactly which frequencies are producing how much output. And the only other thing that could get in the way of appreciating the music besides the tonal balance, besides what the graphs already show you, is you could argue, it has been argued, I've heard, that maybe planar driver technology, for example, could have drivers that return to like the midline on their vibrations. Kind of like return to the middle more quickly. And so if you have a faster responsiveness, then when there's multiple frequencies being played at the same time, as most music has multiple frequencies of all over the place playing at the same time, you don't even have to go to metal to see a lot of overlapping frequencies from things and harmonics and of different instruments overlapping and blah, blah, blah. And just multiple frequencies being played at the same time off of one string being plucked off a guitar is going to have its primary or fundamental frequency, and then it's going to have harmonics like emanating left and right from it in a kind of a messy pattern, sure, but it's happening. So drivers are constantly taxed with being given multiple frequencies simultaneously to have to somehow deliver to a person, even though a frequency like a very high frequency is over 10,000 vibrations in a single second. It has to be able to do that while also being able to be like, I'm also going to slow down for a second and show you a slow thing. But it's like doing everything at once, which is crazy. It has to move that much faster to convey the perception that there's multiple instruments happening at the same time or multiple frequencies. So the theory would go that if you have a planar driver that's more responsive or faster, then maybe it could kind of hop between the different required frequencies that are being told to vibrate at. And maybe that's something you could argue the frequency response graph, the tonal balance, might not necessarily represent the full story of. But that's my loose understanding, as that, again, that layman guy, the normal guy who's really just trying his best to understand this as much as anybody, given whatever experience I have so far. I've got like 90 IEMs, or maybe close to 100 now, and that's basically my experience in this hobby. And however much I've listened to them and tried to discuss them and compare them. I'm really rambling, I know, but hey, it's my live stream, so if you don't like it, you can leave anyway. I'm just like, brain dump. There's just a lot of stuff I think about that I never get across in a video, in a review. And a lot of it can induce pretty strong opinions, consequentially, from like what I'm trying to say. So, and that's something I have to apologize for. Going back to apologies and thinking about what I'm feeling bad about sometimes as a reviewer. I have to apologize, and this is how many people are even going to hear this apology in this format. That's the other thing about live streams I don't know, because like how many people end up actually even seeing it. But it's the only format I know besides some formal weird video where I'm just like uploading a video of myself, but then I may as well just let people see it live if it's going to be like this. And I don't like to cut. I just like to let this is me. Wait, my computer just went to sleep. That's scary. Is my chat still here? My Mac Studio screen. All right, so, well, I'll get back to whatever I was apologizing about. Oh, I was just apologizing because I feel like bad if I mislead people for any reason. So it goes back to that. Like, if I'm using lingo or misunderstanding or misinterpreting something and putting emphasis on it, I have to be really mindful of that. Because I feel like when I was just an audience member looking at people, looking at audio reviewers and looking at forums and stuff like that, I feel like this is a very common theme amongst all of us in the hobby, or at least all of us in different stages in our exposure to the hobby, right? Tell me if I'm wrong on this. But is it not like a super common experience to feel skeptical, to feel an unease of the continuity of knowledge that we are exposed to feel like, not just because it's a lot of information, although that's a part of it too. It's like, maybe this is just a lot, and it seems like it might not be congruent stuff, or I might deserve to be skeptical, but only because I don't know enough yet. Maybe that's an impression you had at some point, where it's like, I don't want to say that there's nonsense I'm hearing because maybe I don't know enough yet. Was that an impression you've ever had? Or was it this kind of where it's just, did you immediately go to like militant skeptic, where it's like, you know what? I don't think any of this is true because I learned one thing so far, and that one thing says it's not true. So I'm going to say it strong. And how much of that's happening? I just feel like so many people are just talking from their bottoms in terms of their impassioned critiques. That's another impression I get, whether it's true or not. Maybe I'm ignorant. Maybe I don't know enough of the science, really. I mean, I maybe not, to be able to be so skeptical of people that I hear are critical. But there's a lot of very strong critical voices from time to time, especially in the IEM community. In the headphone community, it's totally different. I went to a local meetup at a headphone meetup in some local library near me, and it was just like people who live in the area. One guy actually drove down a couple hours from another state, but that was an exceptional case, I thought. Most people were local, and they were all headphone dudes. And my goodness, they were so pleasant to be around. I felt like I had headphones that were given to me from a few months ago, I think, from Linsole to try to check out. And by the way, I don't like any of the headphones. So if you're wondering, like, what does Dan think about those headphones that got released on Linsole's website? If you don't hear from me, I usually don't have anything great to say. But maybe that's just I think that's a condition of being an IEM enthusiast for a lot of us, where it's like, once you go with IEMs, it's hard to appreciate the more diffuse sound of a headphone sometimes. And I tried a lot of headphones at the meet, and I just felt like, okay, what I was going to say was, like, I have a couple of headphones from Linsole that I didn't like very much. And I said to one of the other headphone guys, who was like a serious headphone person compared to me at this point. I am a serious headphone person in terms of the enthusiast level, kind of. I have like my 6 or 7 different headphones from a hobbyist kind of time, not counting the samples I got, and like care in the forums that I was typing in on Head5 before the channel started about these headphones. Oh, like the HD800S sounds like this, or I was a headphone guy, normal headphone guy. That's where I was birthed in this hobby, was headphones. And so, like, anyway, this headphone guy, who's currently a headphone guy compared to me, comes over to me, and I point at the head, and he tries the headphone, or he was thinking of trying the headphones maybe. And I look at the headphones on my table, and I was honest. I said, as kindly as I can towards the headphone, because I felt like these guys take their headphones with love and care. So I even felt bad knocking it, but I said, like, those headphones kind of stink. I got them. I was like telling him, like, I'm a part of a YouTube channel, and I got these headphones for free. This is actually my first time trying it too at this meet, and I actually tried them on just before like everybody else came. I literally opened it in the box, set up my station, and then like listened to them. I was like, wow! And they had that still like new like factory smell that some people love, some people hate. And I put them each on my ear. I'm like, put it into my my Bifrosts and my drop amp that I have set up next to my laptop, and I start listening, that same kind of like first time listening at the headphone meet, except it's my own headphones. And it was just like, I don't like this. I mean, there were a couple that I got, by the way, that I had received that I did try, but like there was a couple that I had never, except for that moment. And I was just like, I could not appreciate it at all. And I just had to double check my senses. I had to like put on my HD 800S, which is a long time personal thing that I've had. And, it was really good. It was what I remembered my HD 800S sounding like for its own flavor profile, having it fun. It was good. And so it's just like all these bad things. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry, those headphones are not very good, or whatever I said to him. And I think he kind of had a reaction. He kind of looked at me. I felt like he did, which was kind of like, you shouldn't say that about headphones. Like, not with that look exactly, but it was kind of like he didn't react to me saying that they stunk. I thought he'd be like, oh well, or like saying something, but he didn't say much of anything. And I think I got that reaction more commonly when I tried to offer any kind of commentary, or I don't know. Maybe it was just like people not having the same kind of expectation of how conversations go, kind of thing. I mean, you ever have that feeling when you go to a group of people and like everybody seems to act a little differently than you? It's like, am I weird? Or also, are people just kind of different? And it's just like a funny thing of trying to figure each other out. Anyway, I should go back to the chat, and I should go back to the conversation about graphs or something. I should get onto real conversations. This is like becoming one of those rambly live streams, which I know they always were whenever I did these. But let me go up to the chat. Okay. If somebody's asking me, would I try the Sony MDR XB90EX? What is it with these names? Can like every manufacturer just agree to like come up with a noun? Please, just a noun. Maybe a verb and a noun if you want to get creative. Like instead of the series of letters, dashes, numbers, then back to letters. MDR-XB90EX. Instead of all that, instead of giving us the factory model number, which it seems like they're doing when these do, it's like somebody's it's like there's a model they have internally, and then they're like, okay, well, we're going to revamp that. We're going to try an alternate version, and we're going to code it with like something like, we'll add an EX after it. So it's like extra. It's like a different version. And then the team probably goes back and forth and like, yes. I like that new model. Let's do it. And then it's like somebody hits publish without considering that you could use a noun. Call it the something based on how it sounds. Okay? If it sounds smooth, call it the ocean wave. Ooh, that's a freebie. If it sounds like you're in a kind of pleasant fog with some detail, some vivid imagery of the upper mids and treble poking in, but it has a warmth, call it the dreams. Actually, that was one of my working titles for a collaboration if they were to actually work with me, with what are they called? Hydisis? Hydizes? Hydizis. I don't know how to say the name. Hydiz? Just Hydiz? Hidiz? Does anyone know? Can somebody tell me? So take the Hydiz, okay? The MP145 is something that I've said a lot about, which is also something that I have to apologize for, that I feel bad about. Because in my review, I did not note the treble sensitivity that I would later be impressed on. That one really bothers me. And I did everything I can to try to remedy that, I should say. I pinned a comment. I edited my comment to note it in my wall of joy where it's still currently sitting, because I still do enjoy it tremendously. What a wonderful timbre. Really, what a wonderful timbre. And the bass presence is just enough to feel like so good and nourishing, but not like bloated necessarily. Okay, I mean, Not when you have its upper end complements it so well. It adds all that needed detail, but it's just ever so slightly too much, like 2 dB, too much in a certain range. I can't remember the hertz exactly. Maybe it was 5 kilohertz to 8 or something like that. Somebody has to check my wall of joy to be sure, because I marked it. I noted it down there. I've done so much EQing that like the numbers kind of, wait, which one had this much hertz that needed to be depressed? Which one was too high there? And I don't remember. I have to check my notes. But it had this range that was just a couple dB too hot. And it's only something that I seriously thought was majorly worth mentioning after I made the review. And it still like kind of hurts me. And I'm even hoping that maybe in the addition of pinning a comment and writing that downside clear as day on the wall of joy under the IEM listed there, I'm hoping the live stream might help as well. Air that out. Ooh, I had to say it somewhere, like I felt like in person, like a live stream. Anyway, I've lost track of so many tangents at this point. Like where was I talking exactly? Let me read the chat. Oh yeah, I got so sidetracked after reading that one comment about the MDR-XB90EX. Come on, nouns. Let's use nouns. It kind of pains me. Like maybe they run out. Maybe they're worried that maybe there's a mutual agreement amongst all the brands. Don't use nouns. There's only so many. We'll run out. I mean, it seems like they're going at the pace that they might, right? Sometimes you wonder. What's your daily IM, Dan? Like, which one do you like to use the most? To be brutally honest with you, it's two different questions. You guys might ask somebody, what do you use daily? And assume that answer is synonymous with, like, which one do you like the most? But me, it's two different questions. What I use daily is very different than what I actually like. Is there an emoji thumbs that just... Wait, the Mac camera does that? It does that in OBS? Is anybody else seeing that? Did anybody see that little floating bubble? That was hilarious. Wait. I know the other one. Let me mute for this because the mic's going to make a crashing sound if I don't. Hold on. It works on OBS. That's hysterical. Oh my gosh. I need to figure out if there's more of those. What would they be? I had to look that up at some point. That's funny. That's actually kind of funny. It's going to get old really fast, I'm sure, but it's funny to me. So what I use daily, to be brutally honest, is every IEM that comes shipped to my house to review. That's the kind of like, there's a give and a take with being a reviewer. You get to have such access to so many things that normally you would never be able to afford all that as a normal hobbyist. But as a reviewer, if you have enough influence, people start to email you. Do you want to get the new sample of our product? And if you don't annoy people too much with your critiques, then they might keep sending you those products. But anyway, I get those products enough still, even though I feel like the flow has gone down. I look at these other reviewers. I'm like, hey, he has that thing. Wait. 1 week later. There's another new thing that I don't have. What happened? Don't get me started on that. Gosh, I lose my tangents upon tangents. So the one I use daily is the stuff that gets shipped to me. I listen to things almost immediately, and the way that I listen to things, you have to realize I have a full-time job as a teacher. So I'm out of the house almost immediately after I wake up and help the kids get set up for their school day. And we don't really sit and eat breakfast. We my routine is like wake up, clothes for me and the kids, change their diapers, My wife helps pack the lunches, and she will pick the clothes for the kids, and we're all just moving around. And then I go in my car, and I take with me an IEM that might have been shipped recently to me, or one that I have on my agenda of like what I want to review next, or whatever, what I want to reflect back on. If it's an old IEM that I want to make sure I remember adequately how it sounds before I continue recommending it. I do that occasionally too. I used to do that more often than I maybe do in the last month or two. I feel like the last month or two has been more just like procedurally, like going through new things. But I do like to incorporate whatever I can into that morning routine for one reason or another. And then I go in my car with that IEM then put into my ears, and I drive to work if I don't hit McDonald's first in the drive-through, which is often enough because I didn't have breakfast at the house for sake of time. And I'm listening to my music as I'm driving to the school. It's probably a 20-minute trip total between McDonald's or just between, door to door, going to the parking lot, whatever. I might sit in my car for another 5-10 minutes listening to a little bit more of the playlist. It's usually my demo playlist, or maybe I'm feeling different that morning and I press shuffle on my loved playlist, which is like 700 plus songs. Love that. And then I'm either eating in my car the McDonald's before I go into work, or I try to eat my classroom really quick before the kids get there. And then the kids get there about maybe 20 minutes after I do, 30 minutes maybe. And I'm just using that time to finish my food and double check my schedule, double check really quickly if something can be printed, blah, blah, blah. And that's like when I listen to stuff in the morning. And then in the evening, when I get out of school, I might put on my IEM on the way to picking up my kids from daycare. And it's not much time there. It's like 20-minute drive. And then I bring them back home, and I have to take care of them until my wife comes home from her job. And then I'm not really listening to anything while supervising the kids, while playing with them and watching them and making sure I hear everything that happens, like if somebody cries or in the other room if they explored somewhere, or, I have to be very present for that. And when my wife does get home, if I'm not helping her or immediately like getting ready for dinner soon after she gets back home, I'm maybe trying to sneak in some time to listen to something in the studio room. But more often than not, there's not so much time. And, I talk with her too when she gets home, checking in with her. And then it's dinner time. And then after dinner, maybe I can squeeze in 30 minutes in my studio, but usually not, before my kids have to go to bed and we have to start their bedtime routine. And then after my son goes to bed, I go downstairs and I wait with my daughter, my baby, for the mom to come back downstairs to take care of her. And it's at that moment, at about 8:30 p.m., when this finally happens, when she comes downstairs to supervise the one baby on her own, that if I'm not choosing to spend that next hour and a half before she goes to sleep with her watching TV, watching a new show, then I will sometimes try to use that time to be downstairs. But I feel bad doing it in my studio. I feel bad using any number of nights in the week while she's still awake doing it. So more often than not, I don't end up really listening and sitting down by myself in reviewer mode until like 9:30 or 10. And I'm supposed to be a full-time teacher the next day. So I don't have much time. That's like my life. That's my life in a nutshell, because that's the same routine every day, Monday through Friday. And then on the weekend, that's where I get the most time. Like what I'm doing right now is actually my wife and my kids are at my parents' house eating dinner. And I am sitting here in the studio making that choice to work. Because we hang out at their house all the time. So this is like a rare, once in a while opportunity to contribute towards my channel in some way or another. I just finished editing, actually, a review for the Canon 2, if anybody was interested in that. And it's actually, I don't know if it's going to be a Canon 2 or if the editing just took me in a place I did not expect, and I ended up discovering through the back and forth in my ears and the back and forth in the editing to remind me what those ears sounded like. I discovered that the Hype 2 might be the best balance armature dynamic driver setup under $300-400. that I'm kind of giving away a conclusion to that video, but yeah. I still would EQ it a little bit, but it's for those driver types. But I mean, at the end of the day, you compare it to anything you want. It doesn't have to be a balanced armature dynamic. I don't think we should limit ourselves to that, but I just thought it would be fun to see what just comparing those driver types would look like in a video, because the Canon was the instigator in the video. It was supposed to be the feature, and I just looked at the drivers on its store page and saw that it was dynamic driver DDs and balance armatures BAs, some number of each. Maybe was it 4 BAs and 1 DD, or the other way around? I don't remember the numbers of each driver. I don't keep track of that so much. But once I saw that it was that driver composition, I just had the idea to pull from my collection of demo recordings those had earphones that I liked, first of all, that were under $300 or $400. There's the thumb up bubble again. And I don't know if people see that, what I see. Maybe you don't. I feel like it's still doing it. I'm just counting. 1, 2. Wait, does it do if I do 2? Hopefully that's not like a gun emoji or something. Oh my goodness. No. Okay, good. That's probably better that it's not. One that I liked, the IM. No, don't do the thumbs up bubble. 2, 2, that it was like under $300-$400, and that it was a BADD. 3. And so the video is going to end up kind of being like the best IEM, DD, and BA. But I don't like that title. I don't like focusing on the drivers. But I know the community might like the driver exploration kind of angle. And so, like, I'm tempted to title it as such. Maybe people might be more interested in seeing the perspective that, I mean, it kind of develops into that view. I am ultimately saying it is the best of those parameters. But I thought it was supposed to be a Canon 2 review, so I was going to label it Canon 2. I don't know. Gosh, I forgot my tangents and where I was going originally. I should probably get to what the hype or what the title sounds like. But I didn't even answer that. I can't answer one question without going into a 20-minute tangent. I love it though. I mean, whatever. So what do I use daily? That's like a 20-minute-old question. 20-minute-old question. It feels like, or something like that. What is your daily IEM? It's the one that I get shipped. It's the one that I'm reviewing. And and I was explaining my schedule to basically say, I don't have much time to do much more than that. For the channel's health, in terms of the amount of contents and the variety that I can comment on, I need to use that little time I have to explore every new IEM I can. And the weekends have been very beneficial for that as well. I've been able to take extended bouts like this on weekends, especially as the kids are getting older and they're a little more independent. They're much easier to supervise with one adult with them than before. So I'm hitting a real stride where I can do more, at least with the time. In terms of mental stress, though, with everything in my life going on, it does get hard to always be in work mode. This is essentially my second job. And I kind of said something in a video about it that I soon deleted after, but it's difficult. I don't want to get into exact numbers because I don't want to I'm not the only person who's allowed to decide what personal details about financials get shared to the world. And out of respect for other people and their preferences for what gets shared or what doesn't, I'll only say this. I'm a teacher. Teachers don't get paid a lot. And daycare is not free in America. This number I'll share, let's just say daycare for each child is about $1,600 to $2,000, and I have 2 children in daycare. So you don't have to do much math, even just with that one major expense of daycare, to see how it's not always easy to not face the stress of that and the pressure of wanting to find something that does earn an income which for me is this channel, which started out not with the high hopes that it would earn anything. I didn't foresee that. I didn't foresee having a sponsor at any point in time that would pay me directly to just produce reviews on any products. I didn't have that knowledge that was really possible or likely. So the impetus of me creating the channel was at a time of it was an extension of me as a forum typing person, just sharing my views. But very fortunately, I put a lot of heart into the channel and its production and what I had to say and being honest and authentic to myself, because that's where it came from anyway, originally, that it eventually did earn itself a chance of a sponsorship. So anyway, which IM do I use daily? I keep forgetting to go back to that. And I keep repeating myself and I keep going into tangents off the same point. It's the stuff that I get shipped with. But the other question was, which one do I like to use the most? Now that is a better question for me. The one that I would like to use the most, if I had the opportunity to use more of, would quite simply be anything on the IM Wall of Joy at this time, which you can find somewhere in the description. Check the description of this video or any video. You'll see a link to the Wall of Joy. And anything on there has a different, unique joy to it that is worth in having time in the rotation. Now, which one of those would I ideally like to spend the most time with if I could only choose one to have time with? It's a tough question because the Fudu is deliciously warm in this like rich base texture, while it's not clear at all, by the way. It's totally for people who want to be blanketed with base. And I mean a blanket, okay? It's not sharp. It's not rich and separated bass or articulated and cut off from the mid bass. It goes into the mids and it's warm. But the timbre is the most beautiful part of it to me. It's the sensation anyway that you get with the Fudu, that it has this beautifully natural timbre quality. Like it sounds like life, but with a blanket. And that blanket is very enjoyable and luscious. So that is it's maybe a novelty effect. I don't think I would want to listen to it most of the time, but what I'm trying to say is there's at least moments where I would like to listen to the Fudu most, where it has that beautiful sound, that natural timbre, that blanket sound, that lusciousness. But it's not what I would want to listen to most of the time. The Unique Melody Mest would probably be the best, safest answer for most of the time. The Mest Mark II, in terms of which one you can still find available to purchase. The Mest Mark I, I still need to revisit and see if I actually prefer more than the Mark II. I do remember that I preferred the Mark II more than the Mark I when I first got the Mark II in, because I was coming from this, like, I really loved the Mark I already. And even though it was kind of bright, it was a brightness that I quickly got used to and quickly started to appreciate and love. And to be very honest, I haven't listened to the Mark I in a serious, like, critical listening, like really trying to like keep it in my memory kind of session for a while. I might have popped it in every now and then out of sheer curiosity in some brief moments, but nothing long enough that I can feel honest telling you all that I still genuinely would prefer it over the Mark II. I don't know for sure. And that's the other thing I have to apologize for. And that's what's been holding me back from making a video about the Mest, even though it's on my Wall of Joy and it's been said to be one of my top favorites for a long time. I describe it on my Wall of Joy as like the ultimate balance. But I just don't feel good about reviewing something where there is supposed competition in its price bracket that I haven't explored even remotely deeply enough. And the reason is because Linsole, which is my main sponsor, my only sponsor right now, and the one who's been sending me, historically, has been sending me plenty of samples, they can only send me so many different brands that are that costly, that cost that much. You have 64 Audio, which does not work through Linsole, and I've tried reaching out to 64 Audio. They don't get back to my emails. They just don't respond. To be honest, it's a little unprofessional. I'm sorry. I don't think that a business inquiry is going to be should be ignored. I think it should at least be courteously responded to. Maybe I'm a stickler about that, but I think in the normal adult world, in most things, if you email somebody and it's an actual professional level email, it's not like some dingus who's like a layman who's being critical in an email towards your product, or they're not like asking for something beyond they might not, have the right to have or hear from you or something. I mean, fine, you can wiggle that around and you might not, you can make a choice not to have people respond to an overwhelmingly large number and casual kind of audience trying to email you, I guess. But like a person who's basically essentially a professional reviewer as far as they come, and who's or whether or not the audience is as large as they can be, if it's an email of professional interest, I believe you should probably reply to those. It's okay to say no. I don't know what they're afraid of exactly. I'm not that kind of guy. It's not like if they say no, I'm going to evangelize that they said no and be a jerk about that. Just have some diplomacy in your emails. If you're afraid of saying no, then you don't know how to diplomatically say no with courtesy. And if you don't know how to do that with courtesy, unless you're not responding because you're overwhelmed and you're not going to respond. And that's a choice. That is a choice. That's a choice. And that's fair. And I don't want to blame people for that. But if it's like, I don't want to respond because I don't want to work with that guy and I see the email and I just don't want to deal with him, can you at least be courteous and send something of confirmation? If I email literally anybody in the education sector, they're going to email me back. Like, even if I have not anything to do with them, they're gonna email back something. You could say, no, thank you, I don't want to work with you. We want to keep our products more exclusive at this time out of reviewer hands. Or you could even say, if you sent your products to another reviewer like HBB, sorry about the wires, sorry guys if it's making a lot of noise. You could say, if I'm, I guess this counts as my thoughts on, in my title of the video, it says thoughts on graphs, community on brands. Hey, this is a thought on brands. This is actually speaking to that. So I'm not totally off topic. If you're worried that I'm a reviewer who would somehow react negatively in public or to you about me being out of being sent products compared to other reviewers, I don't want anything to be blocking communication, is what I'm saying. I don't know. Don't worry about all that. Just reply being like, no, thank you. We're not interested in sending you a sample at this time. That might be like, ouch, to me a little bit to see it, but what's more ouch is being ignored when you know you're using their business email. I don't know. And if anybody in 64 Audio is listening, maybe they just don't know about me. Maybe they're just like, sorry, we didn't know about you. But I sent you an email with a link to my channel. You could have at least said, sorry, you're not large enough for us to consider, or something. And it's not just them. It's not just 64 Audio. I think I might have reached out to at least one or two others that I know have sent samples to other reviewers. But that don't work through Linsol, so I don't have like as easy access to. So anyway, my point is I don't want to review the Mest until I've had access to the more expensive IEMs from like companies like that. But until they send me samples, and with my bad income, I can never sample them. And I'm not, as much as people would like to people have asked, like, Dan, do you just want to like borrow mine? I'm fine doing that. And I could get all this access from doing that. But I don't like loaning. That's something I never want to do again. I don't like loaning. I feel so guilty the entire time. Psychologically, I can't. I just have to say I can't. It's like too much of a burden, I feel. Even if I trust myself that I'm going to return it, even if I think it's going to be not damaged at all, I just don't trust the process for some reason, psychologically, emotionally. It's like for some reason it weighs on me. I can't help it. It just does. So we'll see. In the future, maybe I'll make more money, or maybe these companies will send me samples. I don't know. But let's keep going. So yeah, the Mest was something that I would probably listen to most of the time if I had to choose. But the Mest is also a weird fit. And sometimes I do wonder if I'm not getting the bone conduction correct, or if the seal is correct with the way that it's like this weird beast where you have to tame it every time you put it in your ear. And like sometimes I'm blown away, and sometimes I'm like, it just sounds like normal. But then I'll try it again later and I'll be blown away again. So I don't know if that's mood. I don't know if that's this inconsistency of seal or fitting. I just assumed it was inconsistent fitting because it is kind of awkward when you're trying to do it. And it does feel like there's a moment when you push it in just the right way where it suddenly clicks into sounding open. I've had that experience with it actually. Like, oh, and maybe that's the bone conduction suddenly making contact. I don't know. It's also such a goofy shape of a shell. Sometimes it's kind of bulkier that maybe it's not bone conduction. Maybe it is just the seal. I don't know where I fall on the reason why it's inconsistent like that sometimes, or my feelings are inconsistent. But it does make it a little harder to say, like, it's definitely what I would listen to all the time. But when it works, it's amazing to me. So I don't. It is like the ultimate balance when it works, and it sounds clear and interesting and airy and separated, and the timbre sounds perfect. Like this is what timbre is supposed to be, like when you get it just right. But the Monarch Mark II is also an exceptional case too. I think if the MP145 with my EQ settings was a real product, I think if they were able to, and by the way, I've been talking with Hi-Dizes. I'm going to be very transparent. I've been talking with them, only talks. They're just seeing what's possible on their end with their engineering teams right now. And I don't want to disclose every single specific detail at all because out of professional courtesy, I don't want anybody to think that I would reveal things that are inappropriate to reveal while in talks with them about things. But I want to be at least honest enough to say that I am in talks with Hi-Dizes, specifically about seeing if we can get a collaboration going for the MP145. But that's just a provisional thing. I'm not saying any details about it one way or the other necessarily, but I am trying to do something that, let's just say, the EQ that I published on my channel, if you want to check it out, check the link for, check my profile or channel for the playlist about Dan's EQs. It's recent, where I had an MP145 EQ applied to it in the treble area. That reduction is something, a direction that I'm trying to, encourage them to try. But I have no idea if they're able to do it. It might just not be physically possible the way I envisioned it, and something might not happen. But if I was to have a product of theirs, if I were to have a variant of the MP145 in that style that I'm aiming for, that might be my top pick, even above $1,000 stuff. Because it's surprisingly an amazing timbre with the MP145. That's what's so beautiful about it. It's like such a beautiful, almost like it's within its where it's trying to go. Its chosen balance of bass and upper mids and treble is such a beautiful trajectory. It's one of the most beautiful signatures I've heard in terms of that natural timbre, or at least what comes off as natural timbre. Anyway, it's all perception, I guess, but it's just such a good timbre, such a good sound, a good voicing of the instruments, and enough presence of the bass to feel pleasant by it, and enough detail up top to fill that headspace with the perception of detail. Like even though it has a warm, looking frequency response in the lower end, the upper end plays into it. It pops its head enough that you really feel like you hear so much detail. And the timbre, again, is so beautiful. It's so well balanced. Nothing is so overplayed except a little spot in the treble. It's just this one spot in the treble, and it doesn't take too much away from the timbre. It just what it does is it just makes it a little hotter than it needs to be. So it's not the most perfect thing it can be. It's just so dang close. And if you're not in the mood for it, I could imagine it dropping from a wall of joy moment to an IEM that you don't want in your ears. It just depends on how much heat you can take in that mood or that time of day or whatever. And some people I do fear, and this is what my apology came back to, is I fear that some people who appreciate that timbre from the demo won't have heard that heat as much through their playback device as what I hear in real life. And I feel bad if I didn't mention that enough. Because, again, I only got that impression that strongly after I made the review, at a later mood, a later time. And I'd also been on the heels, mind you, of listening to so many IEMs back to back at pretty, not maybe too loud volumes, but for the amount of time I was exposed, probably too loud. And I heard ringing in my ears afterwards. So there's a lot of doubt that you could, if I didn't hear it the first time, but I heard it later, it could be that, and some speculate, maybe my treble sensitivity just went up in that period because of that exposure. But, I put it back in my ears later after the ringing goes away, days later. And I still hear, it's like maybe I just can't unhear it. I don't know. but I still hear a little bit of heat, more than I suddenly really want. And I still feel guilty about not being able to have that experience and reflect on that experience within a review that was recently published before. But I'm doing everything I can to relay that message as honestly and transparently as I can in every note and live stream as I can. But that's what I would listen to every day, probably, for at this current mood and interest and novelty that I find in its sound signature. If that treble was just reduced a little bit, if they could create a product that goes anywhere close to the direction I was trying to go without butchering the timbre, without doing something in a place that I didn't do in my EQ, if it matches my EQ as closely as possible, I truly believe it's like it could be the king of IM's moment. And so I'm so excited to see if it's possible. So excited. And I feel like if sharing a little bit of that excitement and sharing with people right here that I'm in talks and that I have an EQ that I am that excited about, I feel like if that revs up some interest, then it's only good for them. If it ends up working out with their engineering team, then there's only more clout and anticipation around it. I am genuinely that excited. I mean, listen to it yourself. Go to that short, compare with and without the EQ applied to get exactly what I'm saying. Like, maybe you don't even notice that there is some treble heat until it gets taken away the way it does. And then suddenly it's like everything is so smooth. And now you can even bump up the volume a little bit more because that treble isn't as hot. And then you get to have that louder listening enjoyment level too if you want it. It unlocks for my ears. You know, everybody's ear gain is different in the treble, but that's for me. Okay, so I know I'm like a billion years behind all the comments here because I spend like my whole time talking to like one question at a time. It's ridiculous. But that's my way. If you don't like it, you can leave. It's my channel. It's my live stream. It just becomes, it's almost like a Dan's diary just pouring out. That was HT's question. Thank you for that question, by the way. Make a pinned comment with updated thoughts. So a lot of these comments might be outdated at this point. You're allowed to be incorrect at times. Yeah. Thank you for all that comment. You can't be perfect, all that. Dan would probably recommend SimGot EE at W200. Oh, okay, so somebody asked for a suggestion of something. Oh, yeah. If you guys have any questions about, like, if you're asking the community in the chat room right here, because they're live and they're here and attentive to the chat, if you want to ask them recommendations, you can, but you can also just check my Google Sheet. And then buy from there. By the way, every affiliate purchase really helps me. And you guys know I'm critical. And I'm also trying to be as honest as I can. Because I do believe I might have fewer things on my like top recommendation section. I might be very picky about what gets registered as things that I love. There's only a small handful, right? But I feel like if I distill it down to those things and I show utterly and unabashedly every downside I can find, even of the things that I say are on my wall of joy. Everything has some kind of downside, okay? Everything, practically. Except maybe my MP145 with EQ. Possibly. Actually, I try to EQ things so like they're perfect for what they're going for. Check out my EQ tab in there, okay? If you have any, I'm trying to build like a collection of like EQ profiles that are perfection, that take every product we know and enjoy and love and tweaking that one biggest weakness and turning it into a strength. Like that kind of thing. I'm really excited about the EQ stuff, actually, more than most things. But what was I saying? ADHD, man. Oh, I need to plug in my phone. My laptop. Oh, gosh. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to finish whatever. I'm going to remember whatever I was trying to say. But I have to get my charger. I'll be right back. Okay. So, hold on, I don't want to pick up radio waves or whatever. Interference, magnetic, whatever it is. I've had that problem actually before where the cloud lifter box was too close to my MacBook Pro block in the charging cable. When they were too close, I heard a background like hum in the playback. All right, so what was I saying? So I'm of the belief that if I'm very critical about what gets considered my favorites, that it gives more power to the favorites and the trust and purchasing power that would even occur. So it's like, I feel like it's a win-win to be as critical as possible. It's a win in terms of ethics, in terms of being honest with myself and keeping me on the mark. Like, I believe that a lot of people who are more warm and positive towards products aren't necessarily lying. I think it's also possible, or at least not in the direct sense that you would think, not in a bad actor kind of way. But I think, honestly, that any reviewer who is more positive, less critical, might just, at worst, they could be lying to themselves over time in terms of their tastes getting diluted. Like, if they start trying to find joy in things too often, one could argue maybe it's possible that their sense of what to be sensitive of, like too hot treble or too much of a snap in the upper mids or something like that, punch or something, maybe those could get, it's sometimes maybe hard as a reviewer or a person trying to look for an impression on something to see the clear picture when we're looking for something going in. Whether it's we're looking for positives or we're looking at the graph first and assuming it should sound a certain way, I think it's possible that some people could, without consciously lying or being looking for things that would bias them to a stretched amount of an impression, I think they could still unconsciously be biased and persuaded to think a certain way. And in that sense, they're lying. But I don't think that's when somebody says, "Oh, R's given $5 to me. Thank you, R." Seriously, every time somebody donates anything, it means so much. Whether it's through Patreon support, using the affiliate link. Oh, and by the way, can I just share this? Wait, can I click on this? Oh, he says, Dan, hugs from Brazil. In your opinion, please rank this IM for general listening. Well, if you donate it, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna try my best. Wait, why is this? No, get that little thing. Okay, out of the way. EJ07M. That's the collab with HBB, if I'm not mistaken, or the Lava version or something like that. I didn't listen to that one, unfortunately. I never got the chance. I really wish I did. I never got the chance. Mest Mark II, SA6 Ultra. Ooh, okay. Studio 4, haven't tried that, sorry. Monarch Mark II. So at least between the ones I've tried, Mest Mark II, SA6 Ultra, and Monarch Mark II. By the way, those are actually amazing ones to consider. By the way, because 2 of those are on my wall of joy already, so I can say I love them already. The SA6 Ultra is a Zeos collab that was in limited run, 500 units. And that one's... I'll tell you what happened to me. At my local meetup in some local library recently, there was a guy who traveled a couple of hours to come. And he brought the SA6 Ultra. And it was the only thing he brought to what was mostly a headphone meetup. And I'm like a fish out of water, being an IM guy at a headphone meetup, nicest guys in the world, but I was a fish out of the water. And here's this other guy who's also a fish out of the water, essentially the only other guy there who presented an IM for people to try. Even though a couple of others I found out actually did have IMs in their personal collections. And he brought his SA6 Ultra. I tried it, and I was honestly, in that moment, I was thinking, my brain immediately went to like, this might be my favorite IM of all time kind of experience. But I always know that that first impression must be held skeptical. What happened was it was very smooth, okay? It was like buttery smooth, not buttery, not like softened, but maybe a little bit softened. Slightly buttery smooth, slightly, so you still have this detail, but it was slightly buttery smooth, and it was easy and balanced in that way, and it was just kind of perfect like that, and it was so wonderful in that way. Just this nice touch of warmth in the bass, just this nice touch of upper mids, but like very mellowed, but enough to feel like it's there and even-handed, and the details are all there. It was, and maybe it subdued the treble a little more than a lot of things, but it did it for the justice of this smooth experience. So it's a different kind of experience as the Mest Mark II, because the Mests have more of that treble extension typically than a lot of other gear. Although I'm not looking at the graph, so I can't say for sure which one actually has better treble extension, I guess. But that's my thinking, my memory, which could be wrong. Please fact check me if you need to. But I just felt in that moment like the SA6 Ultra was instant wall of joy. Instant wall of joy. But so is the Monarch Mark II, and so is the Mest Mark II. But for different reasons. Which of those three, like, and here's the thing. I immediately went to the forums, and I didn't tell everybody my feelings yet, because I was like, well, if I tell my whole community that I had this wonderful first impression, and it really was a brief first impression, okay? Even if it was a wall of joy impression, it was a first impression, and it was brief. But I knew I had to get my hands on it. Even if it meant selling a little bit more of my savings to afford it, or my limited budget that we have in this household. I knew for the sake of the channel, too. Even if I don't get to listen to the thing a lot. If it was truly that unique and wonderful, if it was a wall of joy thing, and it was like $500-600 on the forums, it wasn't like these $1 to $2 things that I can't really justify. It's just at this spot where it's expensive, but like I can try to justify it, and it's limited. My brain just went like, I have to have it for the channel just in case. If it's really that good. If it's a forever best product kind of thing. And I knew that if I shared this commentary online, that maybe people would start eating up the thing, even before I've had a longer experience with it, because it's like a limited thing and people want to jump on it. Maybe people are jumping on it right now and checking the used section of the classifieds on headfi.org or .com, whichever it was. Is it .com or what's Headfi? Headfi.org. But I went to the classified section to look for a used set, and I got it, and it's rare. So sorry to make anybody scared now that they won't be able to try it unless they get lucky. But I tried. Okay, but here's what happened. I got it, and I tried it again, and I didn't have the same immediate huge wow factor that I got at the show. Which tends to happen anyway, you know, with anything on a second impression. If your first time was super impressed, your second time might not be. That seems invariably to be true to some extent or another. Or you start to notice the weaknesses of a product the second time or something like that. Something often gets noticed or less appreciated or whatever. But the real stellar ones are the ones that can keep up a pretty strong feeling despite the repeated impressions, I feel. And this is one of those cases where like it was still really good, and but I can't know for sure. Because here's the thing: it wasn't the same set. They were both used, but they weren't the same set. Okay, I bought one from one dude on the forum, and the one I tried at the meetup was somebody else's. So now I'm just like dying. Like I want to like have the original guy's set where I was so impressed, and I want to put it in my measuring rig, and I want to compare it to like the one that I have in my ownership. And I want to see what's different. I want to hear it in my own ears and hear what's different, if anything. But I'll never know, probably. I don't know if he'll ever see my stuff or ever be able to share with me in such a way. I'll never know. Maybe I can just compare what I have to graphs of other people's online, and I can see if mine differs a lot. Because mine feels like my impression of it was just like it's maybe a tad too smooth, a tad too mellowed out, and I can't tell if that's a second impression hitting it, or if that's because it truly is, because it's truly different in frequency response. I don't know. But to best answer your question, between those choices you asked about, the SA6 Ultra could be your top pick. It could be. It fits better than the Mest Mark II. And the Monarch Mark II could be your top pick too, but The SA6 is so beautiful for what it does, almost perfect if you get the right model and hopefully have the right same first impression as me. It's not as excited maybe as the Monarch Mark II, but it is extremely beautiful for how smooth and easy it is and balanced. Just the right amount of butter. So, and it's much less money. So if you can find it. I hope I answered your question enough. But let's go back to these chats. Somebody else did a donation. I just scrolled through and saw. Sorry if I missed this, Shad. $2. You said, could I be your father's cousin's former roommate? Anything's possible. I don't know how to answer that one. Let's keep reading those comments, though, back up in the chat. And then I'm going to say something about graphs. I want to get to everything in my title. I kind of talked about brands and their willingness or not to work with me. I talked about the brand of HiDizis. I talked about how I am talking to them, and I'm hoping that something comes out that I can hype everybody about because it's really a hyped sound. The community, I kind of talk about that through everything I say. And the graphs. Okay, so I need to get to the graphs, but let me read the chat first. Okay. I think it's just that some people get caught up with how a driver type sounds. Like people say things like the planar timbre. Yeah, people, this was a way old reference to a conversation I was making much earlier, right? Okay. Oh, people are talking about different channels they watch. I'm not familiar with some of these, like Prime Audio reviews. The thing is, I don't keep up with a lot of other people's channels, even really popular ones. I just, like HBB is probably the biggest, most respected right now, besides maybe Critical. Although what respect and watching count might be different things. I think HBB has a more tightly in agreement kind of community. My impression is anyway that his community like really agrees with his sensibility of the taste and stuff. Critical, it's hard to get a make on his community composition. It's just so big. It probably includes as many people as HBB in terms of people who follow him, and maybe more. But it also kind of feels like Critical's community is just so big, and with these intersections with gaming communities, it seems. Because he's had a video about like what is the best gaming headphones, and he has a kind of like very meme feel to his edit. He almost, you know what I mean? He feels like the internet guy for audio. He feels like the big guy, the big guns in that sense. But at the same time, he is somebody who's genuinely doing a lot for the hobby in terms of letting measurements be shared and whatever that kind of exploration may be worth with graphs. And he's trying to find out the science more behind the accuracy and application of using graphs from the new rigging of the 5128. He's doing a lot, and he pumps out content. He has a huge database of things that he's ranked with a listing of their drivers and all this stuff that could probably be somebody's very useful reference sheet. It's not like he doesn't deserve anything or anything. I would never say something like that. But his community is very different. It's probably composed of a much larger variety of audience than I think HBB. HBB feels like IEM fandom distilled or something like that. It just feels like he's the biggest in that purest sense somehow to me. I don't know. $5 thank you, Ben Blocks. Gave me $5. That, again, thank you sincerely. Everything people can do is very helpful. He says Eco OH10 versus OH10S. My thoughts. I prefer the OH10 a lot more. A fair bit more, I should say. When I tried I actually bought the OH10S with my own money because I reached out to Hi-Fi Go and they said nope. But they responded, you see, and I respect that. Okay? I have total respect that they responded with saying, like, it's not happening for this one. I think their words, I don't want to quote exactly their words, but it was something not offensive. It was actually very professional. It was just like, it was probably something like, we don't have a sample at this time, you know? So I have absolutely no ill will, by the way, towards Hi-Fi Go at all. They're just not. They just aren't the prime partner of mine, like Linsol has been anyway. So that being said, though, I think they're a smaller outfit. I don't think they can send samples as much as maybe Linsol can afford to. Perhaps. I'm not sure, but that's kind of my read on the two. Anyway, I could be wrong, but I feel like Linsol's bigger and more affordable to their partnerships and what they can give away as samples and what money they can probably put towards sample giving and all that stuff. I don't know. But anyway, Hi-Fi Go didn't have the inventory or willingness. I'm not sure. They were just probably being cordial, and I might not know their exact intentions behind their declination of my request. But I had to buy the OH10S with my own money, and so I had my own wallet involved now, which is something that is very difficult for me with my income to do. But I knew that as somebody who had, I wouldn't necessarily say evangelized the OH10, but definitely propped it up, definitely spoke to its positives, put it high up in my ranks on old ranking sheets. As somebody who did that, I felt not only a responsibility to the community who followed that previous recommendation to try to share my thoughts on the newer product, the OH10S, but I also felt like I needed to know because I was so interested before. I wanted to know what they changed. And it had the potential too to be content on the channel too, that if I found something really genuinely great in it, in its changes, that I could hype it like I hyped the last one, and it would be a new era for Eco and their OH10 lineup. But sadly, when I tried it, it was too thinned out in spots. At least that's how I perceived the thing. I thought they were going to go into a different direction. I thought they were going to smoothen it out a little bit. And I think they did try to smoothen it out in some spots, but there were some spots that came off with, I don't know if it was thin. Maybe that was the wrong way to describe it, but it was edgy or something. I don't even remember entirely, to be very honest, and I don't want to speak too much in too much detail of trying to describe the sound when, to be honest, the OH10S wasn't in my ears, hasn't been in my ears for a while since I bought it when it first came out. But I do remember the impression being it wasn't a good direction. I remember feeling distinctly like I just did not enjoy it. It funked something up, like something was funky. And I use that word a bunch, but when you mess with the timbre, that's the way I that's funky to me. The word funky means that the timbre loses something that was previously natural, or that a kind of set of natural timbres and balances that you're used to calling natural, that feel like something like an accurate portrayal of life, even if one set is portraying life in a very different way than in another. There is somehow, maybe it's the relationship of output to one frequency and another. It could be that this is my theory, this is what I proposed somewhere, but what if, if you hit a snare and it has a fundamental frequency in a certain range, maybe it's in the upper mids, right? Probably. It's not bass. It's going to have harmonics dripping off either end. And my thinking was, well, by reading up on this subject, if harmonics are a doubling thing, or not doubling, but they occur at every increment of that fundamental frequency, or something like that, right? Then, and it might not be upper mids, it might be straight up in the mids and lower bass, actually. I'm going to look it up. It's not important exactly if I get the frequency exactly right from what I'm trying to say eventually with this, but I'm just curious. Snare frequency chart. Let's try that, sure. Okay, so you see all sorts of different things, but I don't know. There's all sorts of things that try to say different things. Okay, one excerpt from this website says how the fundamental pitch or primary frequency of a snare drum is usually in the range of 200 to 400 hertz. Okay, so that's the lower mids, which makes sense. Most things live in the mids, right? And the harmonics going into the upper mids just play a lot to the timbre of that instrument. But that's what I'm trying to say. So let's say it was 200, right? If the primary frequency of a snare is 200 of that snare you're hitting, it's said when you look up the definition of harmonics, and when you look it up on like any articles that try to talk about harmonics, they always have these charts and explanations that say that there are frequencies that repeat every increment of that original frequency. Unless I could easily be misrepresenting something, okay? This is all just me thinking out loud and trying to interpret what I'm looking up and reading and piecing together from what people are saying, while always trying to remain skeptical of like what people are saying at the same time. And so like if it's a 200 hertz frequency fundamentally, then supposedly, according to these articles on harmonics, then it will have generally, it might look much messier than this idealistically. Okay, there's probably frequencies going all over the place. But fundamentally, they say that initial frequency of 200, even though it peaks highest at 200, will also have outputs at, let me move this way for the camera. Well, let's say it starts, wait, if I'm the frequency response graph, is this your left? Wait, no, this is your left. I think this is your left. Yeah. So like if the 200 hertz is like over here and has this really high peak here, then at 400, it should be also present, but lower. And then so on and so forth. Now, I don't remember if the harmonics like alternate in like which one is higher or lower, or if it's just it's in an ideal conditions, it's just supposed to be lower and lower from the fundamental. Okay, which would make intuitive sense to me because they have the strongest force at that frequency, and then it would be a mostly linear decline, you would think. But unless maybe the material has other fundamental frequencies too, like that are simultaneously occurring, and maybe they're having an interplay of both, and then they're like and then are also like interfering with each other or something like that. I mean, because instruments are real things with multiple materials and they vibrate together, and like so there's other stuff going on besides when you hit a snare, just that one membrane. It's like the metal around it and like the little chain things, if it has chain things. I don't know. I'm making a lot of this up. I don't know. But my point is, there's a theory I was thinking about, which was like, okay, if we can say that whatever the pattern is, if a fundamental frequency is supposed to have in real life, not on a playback on some device, but in real life, in the air, like when it reaches a microphone, its measured frequencies are like some kind of primary with fundamentals at certain like heights, then it stands to reason the best way to replay that with natural timbre is to simply play it back so that those harmonics are of the same proportion compared to the original frequency. The same proportions that you would see in real life, you want to experience. Now, what confounds this thinking is the fact that we have ear gain, right? We have other mediators between the recording and the playback or the perception that occur, whether it's anatomy of the ear, changing the treble ear gain, or other gain in general, or it's the seal of the thing and the. But somehow we want to perceive that natural tendency. Is my thinking. And so if you extend this thinking to like looking at it graphically with a frequency response chart, it doesn't seem that implausible to say, well, what if instead of going like this, what if there's a spot where it's supposed to be higher, but it suddenly completely dips? Like what if you completely hollow out a part of the harmonic frequencies that are supposed to occur? If that's the case, wouldn't it sound unnatural? Is that a crazy hypothesis? Is that a crazy line of thinking? To me, that sounds very logical. Now, I understand like equating what you actually record, like actual measured graph of a something in a diffuse field in a space, like, and you have like a microphone, and you have an instrument going boom, 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 and the microphone, it's going to pick up what it picks up in this environment. I understand that like the gain of the ear and any attempts to measure using a coupler are going to be different than maybe it would appear in a diffuse field, but I feel like. So the coupler is going to add or subtract gain at certain points because of its own unique recording characteristics, and its measurements will reflect that. But if we start to like see that there's a certain tendency of coupler measurements to be a certain curvature, like in the upper mids, like if the natural stuff starts to look like it's a flat response, maybe that flat response in the upper mids, that plateau, instead of like a lot of ups and downs, maybe that plateau, like SA6 Ultra, I think has like a little bit of a plateau in its upper mids, right? I think. I could be mistaken. I could be misremembering, but I think it was pretty flat, and it was like lower. But it wasn't like an up and down ride. between that 2 kilohertz and 6 kilohertz. I think it was between 2 and 4, 2 and 5, or 2 and 6. And that right when it hits that, right when the graph, like, I can't do this properly. This is the base. Okay, so it's like, and like right here at like 1,000, it's always at 1,000 hertz, isn't it? When it goes up again. And then it like either meets at 2,000 before it peaks again, or it's like 3,000. It goes, it takes a little longer to hit its peak in the upper mids, but it's always like 2 or 3,000, or 2 to 3. Some are like 3,500 hertz where it hits that peak. But the SA6 Ultra, I think, was like when it hit 3 or 2 or whatever it was. Maybe it was 3.5. I don't remember. It seems to be pretty flat, or at least there was gear that seemed to be that I would call natural. But then there's gear that also have like an up and down that sound natural to me, that I would use the word natural as well. So what could be happening there, I'm thinking, is I wonder if I looked at the frequencies, would it so happen to be that if you have peaks in the right places or flat, that you could still emulate some natural harmonic relationships that occur with instruments. Like you could mellow out some, but if they're harmonically mellowed out together, then you won't notice a really bad timbre or anything. I don't know. This is not actually what the topic, when it says in my video title where it says graphs, this is not the topic exactly. What I was going to say, I was going to say a whole thing, a very strongly worded thing about interpreting graphs and what it means to interpret graphs. And I'll get to that too. Let me go back to the chat though. I just talk and talk and talk. Hopefully people are interested. Hopefully I'm making some sense. I don't know. I kind of imagine I'm just talking a lot and people are listening to it in the background. And then like people are also checking the chat. I just imagine people are just having their own like social time in the chat between each other while also trying to hear this like, interesting stuff he's saying about that thing. I don't know. But let me read the chat. Let me try to engage with you guys. This is, I think I saw this message ages ago and I never answered it yet. Sorry. This is from Tone Deaf Monk. He said, hey, Dan, he might not even be here anymore. Remember the IEC 711 coupler doesn't actually reflect what we hear in our ears, but a great tool. Well, yeah. It doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah. But the thing is, like, this is part of what I'm talking about with graphs, but like, people are like the 711 coupler is not as accurate towards reflecting what's happening in our ear, not nearly as much as like the 5128 rig, the new one that Crinically is using, the much, much more expensive rig. God, I wish I had that. Wouldn't it be cool to see how that sounds in a recording, if it's any better through the playback devices? But I think whatever rig we use, as long as there's like rig to rig analysis consistency, then, if one rig adds a couple dB in a certain treble region, like 8 kilohertz spiking on the 711 coupler, as long as we are consistently aware of how it gets messed with, in which direction it gets messed with, then I feel like we just kind of compensate for that when we think about it. And it's like, if it's the only landmark we have to say, like refer to, like, oh, like if we see a spike at 8 kilohertz above a certain number of dB compared to the rest of the graph, even though the IEC coupler doesn't represent it as well as the 5128, we would still be able to look at that graph at 8 kilohertz and say, like, well, it going that high is high. Like, even if it's not exactly like accurate 1-to-1, we know how it exaggerates things, and that thing is way exaggerated. Like, we still have that relative knowledge of what the coupler, or just like what the graphs look like. If you look at the same kind of graphs enough and you see that this graph just has more there than the other graph, it's all about relativeness too, I feel like, more than necessarily the rig's accuracy itself. If the rig is equally, and what I'm trying to say is that if the rig is equally inaccurate in the same behavioral way for every IEM, then it's just a matter of knowing that graphing tool and being able to compare one product to another on the same graph space. And that's typically what all the reviewers do. But recently, apparently, they said something about the 512A. I saw some article. I skimmed through it, to be honest, but I felt like the crux of it was saying that, like, there could even be frequencies that aren't recorded well at all. Like, there's a huge dip in the treble region on the 711 couplers that when you actually put the same earphone on the 5128, it shows like a spike. And so like there is at least that one area. I think it was like maybe it was 12 kilohertz. I'm not sure. I could be misremembering the article too. Don't quote me completely here. But if that's true, then that could be a case where the 5128 just shows information that the 711 just doesn't show at all. Now, if the 711 just doesn't show a region, like if it was actually how I'm describing it, which I'm not, again, I might not be. But if it's true that there are spots in the 711, like the 12 kilohertz area or something else like that, which almost looks invisible when there actually should be a peak represented at all, then that's not good. Or if the peak does occur at 12 kilohertz, but it like when something's dramatically peaking, we only see like the most minorest of differences. That's also concerning. If like the 711's graph doesn't represent not nearly enough of the extent that something is peaking, and so we might, in a quick glance at these graphs, misjudge what we're looking at. So there is that risk too. But actually, this is a good segue though into my whole thing with graphs in general. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm talking to how I think, honestly, how the tool could be used despite its erroneous spots. But my whole thing about graphs is that I do feel, even with the 5128, I don't know if we know enough as a community to be confident enough sometimes to use graphs as predictive tools. I think that's the one thing that keeps getting me. I'm not sure. Like, I could broadly look at an IM graph and say, like, if there's a huge hump of base and it doesn't go down to its trough, its bottom point, until like 600 or 700 hertz or something really far out there like that, like way into the mids. We all look at that and we just be like, that's base bleeding into the mids. That's base bleed. That's base bleed. And it's like nobody's going to disagree with that because we can see that the base just doesn't go down that much until that one point. Actually, the Melody did this, didn't it? I have a graph of it somewhere. I don't know if I can show you on my screen so quickly. But I had a measurement. I took a measurement. I don't post the measurements to like the Squig Inc. Because honestly, I don't know how to do it right now, and it's just not in my workflow to do. But I've been getting closer and closer to maybe considering it actually. Let me see if I can actually get it up. I'll get my measurement up. I could probably pull up somebody else's, but I'll just pull up mine because why not? I had it somewhere. I had the save file. Did I have a screenshot already prepared? I hope I do. Otherwise, I had to go back into the RU program with my save file and screenshot it, which is not a big deal, but I don't want to have to do it. I have to do it. Okay, I have to open up RU. Okay, hold on. Actually, it was the last thing I measured. Okay, I'm just going to see if OBS can capture that screen. OBS, where are you? Oh, you're on my other computer. Oh, you sneaky dog. I can't share it so easy there. Gosh. Is there a sneaky way I can do this? I don't know if I can show you. Okay, the best I can do is maybe I can just, unfortunately, I'm going to see if somebody else's graph measured the way that mine did. If it's close enough, I'll just share what they did. I'll go to HBB's Squig. I usually use his. He's been nice. Wow, that's very different than how mine looks. Well, no, wait, no, it isn't. Oh, yeah, I wasn't on all SPL. Yeah, it does look a little different. Yeah. Wait, what? What? Huh? Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you guys this. Here's his. Oh gosh, I have to open up the chat on this computer. Gosh, I'm too like multi-computered. Well, anyway, the point is this. Whether you look at his graph or mine, I'm looking at his, but on his, the base drops around, it stops around like 700 hertz. 800 is where it bottoms out, sort of like that. And it's this big base hump. So everybody looked at it probably thinking that it was going to be very warm. Actually, this is a perfect, I have to get this on my screen. Hold on, this is actually too perfect. I need to share this on my screen. This is ridiculous. Sorry, hold on. I'll get this. Let's capture a window. Let's go to OBS Studios. No, that's me. No. Is it Chrome? Oh, it is. It's Chrome. Okay. All right, here it is. I'm going to put it on top of my camera. Okay, we're all looking at the same thing. Here is Bad Guy Good Audio Reviews' Kiwi Melody thing. So if you actually look at this, your impression, like if you never heard the demo or if you never heard it in your own ears, you could easily look at the graph and say that it's very bassy. You would say it's warm. And the upper mids don't even transcend above the bass. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of action going on there. It looks like it would be a smooth experience. And I might predict something similar to you guys. But here's the thing. And you don't see any major dips between 2 and 5 kilohertz. I mean, it gradually kind of goes down from 2.5 to 5 in this measurement. I got to be honest, though, in the one that I measured is a little different. I actually do have a dip. You can't see it. But on my measurement at 4.5 kilohertz, there is much more of a pronounced dip on mine. So it's possible we have different products to boot, which would be really explain things too. Possibly. Very possibly. Wouldn't that be interesting? But, yeah, that's actually something to consider. But, wait, maybe if I turn off the target. No, it's still the same sort of deal. But if you look over at the treble range at 15 kilohertz, it's way up there. And so you might look at that. And also at like about 12 kilohertz, there's a little spike, and that looks little, but we know that the 5128 new rig might actually show more pronunciation of that than it shows here. So there's actually a lot more going on than maybe these graphs necessarily directly tell you, unless you're very familiar with these exaggerations that might occur on the 5128, and that like a little spike on there might actually be much bigger. But you have to go into that with a lot of disclaimers. With all that being said, like it's hard to predict. This is where I really have a lot of gripes. It's if you look at that treble range in particular, that treble range, you could go into this thinking, just if you looked at the bass, like, oh my gosh, that is some bass. It bleeds into the mids. This is going to be a warm set. And that's all I'm really going to say about it. It's like a warm contender. And for a planar, wow. But here's the thing. That treble is hot. And that's what I was trying to talk about with the cymbals and the splashing in my review. And you might not necessarily have known that just looking at a graph. Or you might have. But it would be harder to necessarily predict based on this overwhelming overall appearance of bass that you see and the mellowed out upper mids that slant downward a little bit and don't offend, and they're not big and peaking and standing out by their own. So it looks like an easygoing mix, but it doesn't take much of a spike somewhere for that to dramatically change. And this is where my big gripes come from with graphs. I think we as a community we're trying very hard to understand graphs. We're trying very hard to use them in an informed way to help like share what we think something might sound like. But we have to be, I think we have to be very careful about saying what we think something might sound like. I think the headphone people probably have it right, where for the most part, the only people that we should really listen to and put much stake in are the people who own it, the people who've tried it. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in trying to pick apart an IEM and being critical of its potential value when we're on the forums. And I mean, to be honest, that's all we can do, right? If you can't afford a lot of stuff, what else do you have to do but talk to community members about how something could sound and knock it or put it up based on the graph? Because that's all you can do. And I get that. But I think it's having this effect where we can start to think in those conditions only in graphs. And when I can see the mistakes people can make with analyzing a graph and thinking too much about it, I can see it. And it's like, I want to use graphs more maybe, but I don't want to be another voice putting too much weight on something inappropriately. Like I could say maybe it was the treble in that previous example that was so bad, but I could be wrong. Okay? It could be that little bump in the treble at 6 to 8 kilohertz. It might not be the 15 that's really causing exactly what I think. What if I'm making an error in that judgment, in that telling of, in that interpretation of things? What if the interpretations are off by even a little bit? Like it scares me how much, I mean, not like true scare, figure of speech scare here, but like it kind of scares me. It kind of bothers me a little bit to think that there could be so many ways in which we could misinterpret and misportray what our understandings are of graphs that I just worry. That's all. I just worry that we as a community might be building up some weird mythos around graphs that's not even all the way true. And I don't know. Like, okay, I'll pull up another example. I got to do this. I got to share this with you. If you go to, I'll do it through my YouTube video because I can't get the files on this computer that I'm using, but I'm going to show you kind of a zoomed in of something. Hold on. I'll bring it up in a second. I know I'm way off in the deep end here talking about things. I'm probably so boring now to people, but I don't care. I'm telling you anyway. But watch this. If I go to, was it the MP145 that did this? I think so. Hold on. I'm going to have it up in just a second, guys. Oh, come on. Can I not scrub a short? Do I have to sit here for the whole short? No, I can scrub a short. I should be able to scrub a short. No? Not on the computer. Does not let you scrub shorts on the computer. Wow. Wow. Okay, well, watch this. When the graph's going to come up soon, this is the MP445. Okay, you can't hear it, but it's something you can check out. I'll share the link. Hold on. Let me share the link so people can hear it if they want. Wait, can I see my live stream here? Gosh. Okay, I'll just have to open it on two computers. It's fine. Give me a moment, guys. Sorry. Wait, can people see that screen? Yeah, it's all right. I don't care. It's fine. Let's go to this one. Okay, what am I doing? There we go. Okay. I'm getting it. I'm getting there. I'll be right with everybody. Just need to join the live stream, and then I can comment in it. Okay. So here is the short. You don't necessarily need to listen to it yet. I'm going to find the graph first to make the point. Maybe listen to it out if anybody's still following me. Wait. Okay, so look at this. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This right here. And this was actually, I was so kind of like taken by this point I want to make about this in a second that I was tempted to make an entire video. And I might still make an entire video about this. But this is actually a big point for me. This is like where I put the title Thoughts on Graphs on this live stream. This is what I was thinking of. Right here. This is like it. So these are two frequency responses of the MP145. Okay? They look identical to any. If you turned off that green line for my EQ'd version and you saw that graph, you might be like, oh, that treble, maybe the treble at the 15 kilohertz looks a little, maybe that looks a little spiky and like and elevated. Is that going to be harsh? And that one spike at 8 kilohertz is also a spike. Is that going to make it feel a little too splashy or harsh? Is that where? And indeed, there is treble heat, guys. There is treble heat in the MP145. But would you have been able to determine that with that graph? Actually, would that graph have any truly good, reliable, predictive power for that heat? Because what I did is take away maybe 2 dB from that upper treble region that you see in the green, how it's now recessed just that much, just like 1 to 2 dB. But it's the same overall curvatures. It's the same general sense of spiking in those places. Like the difference between how much it is in the original versus how much it is in the green line and the EQ is so minimal that I would argue, like if I did this as a poll, if I presented somehow to one group of people the blue line. Wait, it's now off camera? Okay, here it is. If I were to be able to say to one group of people, some group of audio files, look at the blue line, please predict what you think this will sound like. And then I gave another group the green line. Would they not, I would speculate, my hypothesis anyway, is that those two groups would show very similar results on average, given the same background of maybe experience. Although a big wrench in that is that like people could also, maybe our community would also just have wildly different predictions anyway, and that would just show an inconsistency in our community. So either way, but whatever. I would think that people would be hard-pressed, okay? I think people would be hard-pressed to really be able to determine the actual audible difference between those two before actually listening to them. But if you listen to the MP140, if any of you have the MP145, or if you get it and you're willing to do this, if you want to apply my EQ profile, you tell me you don't hear a significant difference in how much that treble heat goes down. and how much it significantly changes how you would qualify your experience if you were to communicate it to somebody else. Like if I communicate my experience, if I write in my notes about what I think that EQ does to it, I would say it takes away the treble heat. It's so much more listenable, and it doesn't necessarily take away the timbre. Clearly, the timbre is overall the same. The relative balance between the frequencies is generally the same, but the heat is significantly reduced, okay? But it doesn't look like that. So one person would listen to the blue line and say, oh, that has some splashy sounds in the treble. And then another person who's just using their ears to listen to the green line, to the EQ'd version of it, might say that it's really clean and easy to listen to while still being detailed. So the qualitative descriptors we use are so different from our ears experience compared to what I feel like people are doing with graphs when they try to use them as predictive tools. I really think that the community might have an issue with the fidelity and reliability of our predictive qualifiers based on graphs alone when we do that, when we try to attempt to predict things based on the graph. If I can hear such a significant difference between the upper treble range as such, just imagine like how many times somebody says something is too snappy or too shouty, how much a couple dB difference on the graph would have made, and the graph still would have looked very similar. I don't know how much graphs ultimately will do in those most important distinctive moments of distinguishing between something being too shouty or just punchy enough, or hot versus just detailed enough. Like, I don't know if reading graphs can tell us those differences well enough. And those are the differences that can often be the most significantly important when you're actually sitting to listen to it. This is what I'm saying, okay? This is my whole spiel about graphs. I think it's a problem. I think that we can use graphs in the most vague ways, okay? We could probably look at this, okay, we could look at both and say, that's a spike at 8 no matter how you look at it. So it's going to have generally some energy that 8 kilohertz provides. It's going to have those maybe, and we can say maybe it would have some unwanted 8 kilohertz edginess. Maybe. But we wouldn't know for sure because the difference between hearing that as edgy and hearing it as good and detailed is that difference you see right on your screen, in my opinion. So I would argue that we should be careful with the extent to which we think really that something's going to be edgy or shouty. I think in theory, like if you understood it like some intelligent artificial intelligence who looked at these graphs enough to know every single different nuance and how exactly a human being would qualify that difference of 2 dB, that if you could keep all that in your head and remember all those details and speak to that at every frequency range and how every little difference would be this exact qualified difference to a human, maybe AI or some interpretive abilities like that would be able to do it. But I sincerely doubt that we as human listeners and enthusiasts have that capability so easily. So I'm very skeptical. I have a lot of skepticism around graph interpretation when it's used to a fine degree. Okay? Broad degrees, sure. I could look at a graph too and say generally that base hump, this one here, will provide warmth, okay? Because it doesn't stop until the end. But how the upper end and the treble and the harmonic and how that stuff is edgy or not plays together in the mix, that's very difficult, okay? At least in this example with that small difference. Anyway, enough of that. Let me read the chat, okay? Let me read the chat. I'll catch up with that. Okay. I pretty much addressed the things in the title, so I feel good about that. But now let's just have fun with it. I don't think my wife's home soon yet. She was at dinner at my parents' house. I'll say, what's up? I pretty much have to... I'm only doing this live stream, too, because I made a good... I worked well in my editing of my next review video. I couldn't help myself. I was going to take a break, but I just had so much fun editing, actually. It actually gave me a sense of like fulfillment to be editing again. Editing is a joy. Clipping together the different sounds and finding those differences is a joy. Anyway, I finished editing the video. Spoiler alert, the Hype 2 is basically the winner of that video, and the Canon 2 is a good balanced overall listening experience, but I would recommend the Hype 2 instead. Yeah. And the Awful Performer 5 is also very good, but it has a little too much heat or wonk somewhere. I can't remember what my notes were exactly, but it's a good competitor, though. It's so close to being like this wonderfully perfect kind of sound. I think with a little bit of EQ that I published on my my channel, if those were taken to heart and Awful wanted to make a product that was based on my EQ suggestions, and if it worked out, I think it could be an amazing bestseller. Honestly, I think I only EQ things to a profile that with one band because apparently if you use multiple bands in your EQ, I don't think these engineers can really practically apply those changes physically. It seems like the physical science is limited to like one area or another. And so I try to work with that kind of restriction, if you will. But there's almost always, invariably, there's always some single range in any IEM that I've enjoyed, that I started already with an enjoyable foundation. There's usually just at least one area that, if addressed, would significantly improve how I take to the sound. So I've been on a roll, like listening to my enjoyable ranked IEMs and higher, my loved ones too, and trying to turn them into a wall of joy IEM using just one band. Usually it's just treble dampening, actually, but it's knowing tastefully exactly which range in the treble, how wide the range, where the range is centered, and how deep to go. It's all the art of finding that, and finding that I have. Check my EQ recommendations, people. In my ranking sheet, it's there. It has its own tab. Try them, please. I want more. I want people to like vouch for it, because I seriously, I hear it as such beautiful changes. So I'm just excited to see people try it. Anyway, there's a lot of, I know I missed a heck of a ton of messages here, so I'm going to skim rapidly. Somebody said, how am I doing? That's a 30-minute dialogue, and I'm not going to get into it terribly, but I'm doing great, but at the same time, I'm under a lot of stress sometimes, especially with the financials of the channel and the financials of being a teacher. It's a lot of stress, to be very honest with you. But in between all that stress, you still try to find the joy and speak to your passion, which is, for me, this hobby right now. And I want this to be my side job. I want this to be my second job. But it's getting really difficult sometimes. When is it coming, the demo review of Nightjar Acoustic Singularity? I've never tried it. They haven't sent me a sample. Can't review it. Dan doesn't like the new vinyl PC smell. I think I commented on headphone smells like an hour ago, so I'm really behind. Tone Deaf Monk said the EA 1000 is a few levels better than the EA 500. I'd have to do a direct side-by-side to add my commentary to that. That doesn't sound far off, but I have to try it myself to be sure. I don't know. I remember having a good impression of both, though. The A500 was... Oh. Call from my wife. I'll mute it if I need to. Yes. Okay. All right. So my son is having an issue tonight at dinner, apparently. So I am going to be having to help a very unhappy little boy soon when they get back to the house for bedtime. But let me see if I can answer a question. I really wish I could spend more time. I do, but I'll answer what I can really quick here. Speak to maybe whatever was happening. Well, it's hard to like put my train of thought back onto this stuff. But the EA 1000, I can only I have about a few minutes. I think they just left. The EA 1000 and the EA 500. I need to make a SimGot video, but that's gonna happen. I'm gonna have full brand review videos in the future. Right now, as soon as I finish this Canon 2 review, / Hype 2 review, I'm going to be focused a lot more on SimGot, ZenZup. I have a certain lineup of brands that I have in mind that I'm going to review systematically. I'm going to do every product they've released so far, kind of review videos. I think it's going to be really fun. Okay. Oh yeah, everybody's looking at the thumbs up thing. Yeah. I really have to skim. I realize I might have missed so many messages. Somebody asked me before, so sorry I missed the mention. Somebody says, do you think the Blessing 3 Dawn will be another game changer? Crin's been taking his time. I didn't actually like the Blessing series, the Blessing 2 series, that much on first impressions and on several revisits. But recently, the Blessing 2 Dusk became enjoyable for me out of nowhere. I suddenly appreciated, I think it's because of my treble sensitivity recently, particularly, but the Blessing 2 Dusk really kind of mellows out the treble. And what might have seemed boring to me originally on many occasions is now more enjoyable than it had been. It's something that I can more appreciate now for its laid back feel, on purpose laid back kind of way. It lets you raise the volume without feeling like anything is hurting you, which is a rarity. It shouldn't be a rarity, but it's kind of a rarity in the hobby, actually, for a lot of products. You can't go that much without fatigue setting in. But the Blessing 2 Dusk allows you to go without fatigue. But upon more comparing it back and forth with other things, you do realize what you miss from the Blessing 2 Dusk in other things. So it's enjoyable, but I don't love it. So do I think the Blessing 3 Dawn will be a game changer? It's very possible it'll be a game changer for most people. But if it's within the Blessing series, if it takes too much from it in the ways that I don't enjoy, the lack of energy in certain areas, then it might not mean much to me. I don't know. It could be something I love. I just don't know. I'd have to hear it in my ears. I haven't seen graphs. I don't know what it's supposed to look like or anything or sound like. I keep going. There's just so much, and I want to do so much more. I'm so sorry, guys, for not seeing all these messages earlier, but I just got into so much conversation. Okay, so actually, there wasn't so much in the chat. Maybe people were just listening most of the time, and that is so cool. Okay. But yeah, okay. It looks like I'm caught up. I think the last message at the bottom says something, what's an IEM that's worth an upgrade over the Dunu Titan S? Well, I didn't like the Dunu Titan S much, but that's only when Dunu had sent me a prototype once upon a time, and I sent it back to them, so I don't have a current impression, and it was an old era, it was really an old time. I probably should get it again someday, just to have in my collection for reference, but I didn't like it when I got it very much. Opinions can change though. So what IEM is a worthwhile upgrade over that? Just look at my ranking sheet and look at anything that's ranked enjoyable or higher. I would always recommend just starting at my wall of joy, full stop. Why would you go to anything less? If I already had identified all my favorites right there. And I have favorites on there that are cheap. Like the T3 Plus is extremely good for a nice natural sounding timbre, even if it's not the cleanest and most detailed necessarily and smooth, but it's got a great timbre. I'm rushing a little bit here because I had to go, but I don't want them to get to the house and not see me being ready to help him out of the car. He seems to be having a mood, but my son, and Fudu is very good at $90. And it's like astonishingly good sounding timbre. And if you go to like something like 150 or 200, the MP145 with a little bit of EQ is my perfect IM for what it's doing. But even without EQ, it's still very entertaining. You just have to be wary for a little bit of that treble heat, and it could get to you, and I feel bad if it does, and people buy it on my word, and then they really can't stand that treble heat. I'm sorry. But it is an amazing balance pretty much otherwise, and it has a very nice sound to it. Very detailed and yet warm. All right, I gotta go. All right, guys, I'm sorry if I didn't read any chats or if I missed anything that was a donation chat. Gosh, I hope I don't, or I didn't. Yeah. Oh, and Shad's added, "May the Schwartz be with you." I'm just gonna heart that. That was funny. Spaceballs, yes. Okay, guys, this was lovely. I'll try to do it again, like maybe in a month from now. Who knows? Maybe another time sooner. I don't know. Whenever it feels right. See ya. Bye. It's been great.